gives me the nod.
I'm waiting 25 seconds. Welcome to the Planning Commission's June 11th meeting. I'm Acting Chairman Hillary Janet.
Into the microphone, please.
Oh, sorry, into the microphone. I see, speaking to the audience, sorry.
Yeah, you can pull it all the way forward.
I haven't been acting very long. Still can't hear. Okay, I'll try and speak up. Is that better? Yes, better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pull it closer.
Let me try again. Okay,
There you go.
now? Okay. Acting Commissioner Hillary Janet. Tonight's invocation will be given by Commissioner Wayne Thomason, and the pledge will be led by Commissioner LaDante Walker. So please rise and join us.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. Please help our country with the turmoil it's in, and bless all our city officials and help them make the right decisions. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Planning Commission meeting for June 11th, 2020 is now called to order. Before we call the roll, the governor's social distancing directives for COVID-19 have changed our meeting format, you might notice, considerably. Some planning commissioners are here on board in board chambers. Some are participating from elsewhere via Zoom. In chambers with me are Commissioners LaDante Walker, Brian White, Wayne Thomason, and Rick Ramick. Planning and Directing Director Kathy Selman is on my right. Joining us on Zoom are Michelle Baker, Joe Gosley, and alternatives, Bart Newman, who is sitting in for a vacant seat, and Baker Goldsmith, sitting in for Mike Dugan. We are limited to a total of 21 occupants in the board chambers. Applicant representatives and planning staff who worked on the staff report will be in the room with us. Some members of the public can be accommodated in chambers if they have signed up to speak. Once you have spoken, please leave the chamber so that someone else can come in to speak. Zoning Administrator Robin Wise will be coordinating speakers who have signed up so everyone has an opportunity. If you intend to speak, please sign up on the sheets in the lobby. Names will be called in the order of the sign-up sheets. Now, that's all that's new, so please bear with us as we learn these new ways of doing everything. Mr. Stoddard, will you please call the roll?
Ramick,
Here?
Thomason,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Gosley, Joe Gosley, Bart Newman,
Here.
Baker Jackson Goldsmith,
Here.
Brian White,
Here.
LaDante Walker,
Here.
Kerry Hobby.
Uh-oh.
It looks like Joe is here, but he was muted at the time, but now he's unmuted.
Joe, are you present?
Thank you. Here.
All right. Hillary.
Here. We have
1, 2, 3,
enough people, right?
5, 6.
Yes.
We do. Okay. May I have a motion for approval of last month's minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes pass.
Aye.
Oh, I need to wait, don't I? It's a little bit slower. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay. May I have a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Was that a delay or not in favor of the agenda?
It was Carrie.
It was an aye, yeah.
Does that matter?
It was an aye.
Okay, so she can vote against it. Because it says
No.
same sign.
Yes, I is,
She was delayed.
yeah.
Oh, just delay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, the agenda's approved.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay, the next item on tonight's agenda is new business. There will be an opportunity for the applicant and for the public to provide testimony. Director Selman, would you please introduce the next item, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The item is a rezone application, RZ 20063. It is a request for a zone change from R2 to C3, located at approximately 2105 Malvern Avenue.
A motion to approve merely gets the matter on the floor for discussion. A motion to approve and a second do not mean that you are necessarily in favor of a particular application. May I have a motion for approval of item 1?
So approved, item 1.
Second?
I'd like to say something before we go any further. This is Bart Newman. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I have, in the past, this particular parcel of land belonged to my church, and I was the finance committee chairman at the time when it was sold to not to the current owner, to the prior owner. But I have no financial interest in it whatsoever, and at this point, but I did have a past financial interest. Well, my church had a financial interest in it, but that's all. Just for total transparency, my name might be on some old documents regarding this piece of property.
Okay. Ms. Selman, does that mean he needs to recuse himself? Or?
He does not, unless someone on Planning Commission would like to request him to. I do have a question for Mr. Newman. Mr. Newman, do you feel that you can make a decision based upon the facts in the record?
Yes, I do.
Then we would love to have your participation. All right. Motion for item 1 has passed, and it is on the floor. Now, Director Selman, would you please present the staff report on item 1?
Thank you. The applicant is Dayton Myers, representing Morano LLC, and they are seeking C3, neighborhood commercial zoning, on 2 acres of undeveloped land owned by James Green and currently zoned R2 suburban residential. The subject property is designated residential low density on the future land use plan map. The land fronts Malvern Avenue between Suburban Drive and Lakeside Road, with additional frontage on the one-way segment of Suburban and a small amount on the two-way segment as well. The Malvern Avenue frontage's midpoint has a slight horizontal curve as well as a vertical curve. It is located in Board District number 6. The applicant's supplemental letter quotes the Hot Springs Code, saying that the rezoning must convincingly demonstrate that the character of the neighborhood will not be materially or adversely affected by the uses permitted in the proposed zone change. Several neighboring landowners and residents testified in December of 2011 that a prior application for commercial rezoning would materially and adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood, and that 2011 application was not approved. We have had in the ballpark of 100 letters from residents in the neighborhood, all of which are in opposition. We have kept the website updated, but have additional letters, 16 in number, including a petition, have been received today. That was an opposition petition with 15 signatures. Mail from Angela Rose, David Rose, Jennifer Rose, David Rose Jr., Bradley Landon, Karma Turner, Matt Cheatham, Nori Cheatham, Pat Penner, Jessica Soroka, Chris Ham, Jordan Anthony, Lula Childs, Martha Cooley, Elizabeth Colgrove, and Diana Bratton. And that is in addition to those that were published on the website. The Arkansas Department of Transportation is getting ready to construct a traffic signal at Lakeside Road to improve pedestrian, property, and vehicle safety along Malvern Avenue at Lakeside. The applicant's letter states, "We contend hardly any extra traffic is likely to travel to the area for any business that falls within the permitted uses of C3 zoning." The letter also quotes Hot Springs Code 16254A, saying C3 businesses must rely on the migration of customers from outside the neighborhood boundaries. The Arkansas Department of Transportation daily vehicle counts near the subject lots hasn't varied very much from the year 2012 through 2018. That was the most recent year available. And those numbers range between 15 and 16,000 a day. So there's been very little change in the last year since 2012. The 2-acre size nominally meets the minimum area to request a rezone. The C3 district requires neither a specific use designation nor a binding development plan. Given the intimacy of the subject lots within the neighborhood, no plan defining the limits of future development, frontage along a one-way stretch of suburban drive, and the subject's location on Malvern Avenue with both vertical and horizontal curvature, it is not possible to assess that the character of the neighborhood will not be materially or adversely affected. The applicant's May 22nd letter states that the request fulfills a public need for land so zoned. In looking at the inventory of undeveloped lots zoned C3, the staff was able to identify 14 such lots within less than a mile of the subject lots. An additional 2 C3 zones that have existing homes on them were not counted in that total. The applicant fails to demonstrate a need for additional C3 land. The finding is that the application fails to demonstrate convincingly that a zone change from R2 to C3 will not materially or adversely affect the neighborhood. The application fails to present or demonstrate a public need for land so zoned, as we have more than a dozen undeveloped C3 properties on the zoning map within a mile. Hot Springs Code requirements for zone change are not met. The recommendation of the staff report is that Planning Commission not approve a recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve an ordinance amending the zoning map from R2 to C3 for the subject lots. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Selman. Will the applicant now come forward?
I'm sorry. This is Carrie. Excuse myself. Yes. I'm sorry. This meeting room is a bit different for me. I tried to do it earlier, but I didn't know what to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, so Carrie is recusing.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes.
Okay. You have a maximum of 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Q. Byram Hurst, and I represent the applicant. And first of all, I want to thank you for letting us be here and to speak to this. And I know this is a controversial situation, and I tell you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hurst, I'm sorry, I need to stop you just a moment.
Is it not working?
It's working fine, but we need your address, please.
My address, my home address is 346 Lake Hamilton Drive, Hot Springs.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You know, it's a privilege for me to represent Jim Green, who is the sole member of the LLC known as Marano, who owns the property. And, you know, every one of you is a long-time or fairly long-time resident of Hot Springs. And you've had the opportunity to drive from right where we are to this property on probably many occasions. And we have all watched as Malvern Avenue has prospered, but the prosper is with commercial activity. There have been banks, pharmacies, office buildings, hospitals, all kinds and sorts along the way. As a matter of fact, if you drive that route, you'll find that there are only 2 residents that front Malvern Avenue between here and Lakeside Road. You'll also find that every stoplight that's there is in front of commercial property and not residential property. And I think that my argument to you is that this is a matter of common sense. This is a matter of reality. And I noticed that Ms. Selman mentioned in her opening that this property, there was an application in 2011. And that's exactly right, there was. Arvis Bank wanted to look at this property. This property has been basically sitting vacant since at least 2011. No activity. It's not residential property. But you know, the arguments that are made against this in 2011 when Arvest was denied are the same arguments that's made tonight. But there's a difference. There's more growth. As was mentioned, there's a stoplight that's going in right there. And that's going to curb a lot of the argument about safety and traffic count. The traffic count is not huge in this area. It's, as the chair said, it's 16,000 per day. Where on Albert Pike, it's 35,000 a day. I think the opposition is basically based upon fear. I think it's a fear of the unknown, a fear of change. But we have to recognize that change can be good, that commercial activity can be compatible with residents and sometimes helps residences. Now, I know that there's opposition here, and I tell you, almost every one of these people that oppose it are my good, close friends that I would never do anything to harm. But we have to face the reality of what's out here on Malvern Avenue, and it's great because it's growing. Not only do we have a stop sign, a stoplight for the first time that's going in there, and I might point out that it's my client's property that allowed the highway department to put in the stoplight. But also, you know, we had I looked back at the survey that was done in 2011 by Arvest, and if you had an opportunity to review a survey, there's almost 400 feet on Malvern Avenue with this property. Back in 2000 and the 2000s, there was a home on this property, and it was torn down. But there was a driveway and there were entrances, but we're not talking about ingress and egress tonight. We're talking about a zone change. But I want to tell you something more importantly. This year we had litigation about this property. This year we had in front of the court what this property was all about in reflection to a subdivision. The court ruled on this property, and I want to just read to you 3 paragraphs from the court ruling. It says, the evidence before the court clearly reflects that there has been a radical and dramatic change in the character of the entire surrounding area, which is Arkansas Highway 270, referred to as Malvern Avenue. The perpetuation of the restrictive covenants in the deeds of 1946 are no longer of benefit to this land, as numerous establishments are commercial in nature, including retail, commercial, and professional offices, hospitals, pharmacies, banks, and many other types of commercial activity. The continued enforcement of a restrictive covenant would be inequitable, unreasonable, and unduly oppressive. Arkansas law does not favor restraints on the alienation of real property. Now, that was the direction of the court on this exact piece of property. Now, certainly, your decisions are not made by popularity. Your decisions are not made because of the influence of people, and good people.
Mr. Hurst, I'm sorry, but your time has expired.
But we finally have to face the reality of this situation. I hope you'll approve this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Do any commissioners have any questions?
I'd like to know when the court decision was, sir.
Oh, when it was?
Yes.
It was on May the 8th of this year, 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Which court made that determination, Mr. Hurst?
I'm sorry, Mr. White. What?
Which court made that determination?
Division 1 was where the court was, where the
Division
case
1?
was, yes.
Okay.
Any others? Any Zoomers? Thank
No,
you,
thanks.
sir. Oh, wait.
Not at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to be a little slower there. Okay. We will now call those who have signed up to speak on this application. In order to allow time for all interested parties, we ask each person to limit your conversation to 3 minutes. Please address your comments to the commission and not to the audience. And if someone has previously covered your concerns, please, in the interest of everyone getting heard, you can just say, my comment has already been covered. Members of the commission can ask questions during the course of the discussion process. When I call your name, please come to the podium, give us your name again and your address. And remember, 3 minutes. Thank you. Anthony Brian Rees?
Attorney Brian Rees.
Oh, I'm sorry, Attorney Brian Rees. I can't read. I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you very much. I am Brian Rees, and I'm here today. I'm an
Sir,
attorney.
I need your address.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Office is 135 Section Line Road, Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'm
Thank
here
you.
today representing Dr. John and Mrs. Valerie Bond, who live at 108 Suburban. If you're looking at your maps, that is parcel 44120 or lot 21 of Suburban Heights subdivision, which turns out to be the property that is directly east of and contiguous with this property. I'm here to speak on their behalf in opposition of this. And it's interesting that my friend, and yes, he is my friend, Mr. Hurst, talked about fear of the unknown. Well, one of the problems with this application is it is unknown. We have no idea what is intended for this rezoning and for this property. But I think it's a good thing to take care of some of that unknown and just to give an idea of what the permitted uses are under C3, that's 16-152 of the zoning code. Many of these don't even need a conditional use permit, but here are the things that can be done. Alcohol package sales, animal hospital, pound or shelter, bars, lounges, taverns, car wash, community center, convenience store, 3,500 square feet or less, convenience store, 3,500 square feet or more, dwelling unit, multifamily duplex, dwelling multifamily up to 12 units per acre, that's 24, dwelling multifamily over 12 units per acre, dwelling family 0 lot line, funeral home and related facilities, gasoline or service station, grocery store, hotels, motels, massage parlors, nightclubs and dance halls, restaurant drive-through, drive-in, restaurant sit-down, takeout, tattoo parlor, variety store, discount store, vehicle auto body repair painting, vehicle mechanical service repair, water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. And so, do the neighbors out there, including my clients, the Bonds, have a justified fear of what might be right next to them and creating the situation with the traffic that I'll talk about in just a minute? I think that their fear is not only not irrational, but it's quite justified. I also want to, if I may...
Sir?
Yes.
Mr. Rees, I'm sorry, but your time is up.
Oh, my gosh, really? Well, maybe I've made the most important point anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. John Bond?
My name is John Bond, and I live at 108 Suburban Drive.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in opposition to the rezoning petition. The developer is attempting to rezone a piece of property for commercial use that sits in the middle of several residential subdivisions. The property under discussion is in the Suburban Heights subdivision and is and has been residential for the last 60 years. And my family has lived at that location for the last 60 years. In circulating a petition today in the Suburban Heights area, I found universal opposition to the concept of rezoning this property. Any commercial property at this location would need to probably exit Suburban Drive, and Suburban Drive, as you've mentioned, is one way, so that any traffic, commercial traffic, would have to travel through the surrounding residential roads to get back to the Malvern Avenue, and these roads have not been built for commercial traffic. The traffic would be a threat to the tranquility of the residential neighborhood and the safety of the inhabitants. The Lakeside Road Malvern Avenue intersection is fairly highly traveled, and it's very dangerous because you have a hill, and as you're approaching it from town, you have these people going 40 and 50 miles an hour, and then you're trying to turn left, and we've had a number of accidents at this intersection. Any business located at this property that you're trying to rezone would disrupt the traffic pattern at this intersection and also increase the volume at the intersection. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Miss Peggy, I'm sorry, I can't read your last name. Your handwriting's beautiful.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Peggy Maruther, 203 Bel Air Drive. I am vehemently opposed to this rezoning at 2105 Malvern Avenue. Just as we finally approach the installation of a traffic light at Lakeside Road in Malvern, someone wants to increase the traffic. We are about to ameliorate, get some relief from this terrible safety hazard. The communities that are affected by the ingress and egress are Suburban Drive, Lakeside Road, Eastgate 1 and 2, Seven Oaks, Baffinwood, Baffin Ridge, Town Square, St. Charles Place, Bel Air Drive, Arlington Park Residential, which is developed within the Country Club Lane, and beautiful homes that are along Malvern Avenue. This is truly a safety issue. The elevation at Lakeside Road, where my mother lived, she lived at 101 Lakeside Road, and she would call me every time there was a fatality. And I would run over, and she would just get hysterical. She lived there for 15 or 18 years, I don't remember. And she couldn't take it anymore, and she left. The highway department didn't just approve this. It was warranted. And I'm asking you, please don't do this to the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that empties out from Lakeside Road, that's Eastgate 2, and Eastgate 1 goes through my street, Bel Air Drive, and then they take Valley View. Country Club Lane empties out into this street 2. Let me see what else I've got in here. I'd like to read this. This is 16-254, small a. C3 business must rely on the migration, people coming from somewhere else, of customers from outside of the neighborhood's boundaries. That means we're going to be drawing more people in with, I don't care what you put there. You're going to have a dumpster. And Dr. and Mrs. Bond are on one side. My mom's old house is on the other side. It smells. Then it says access and traffic circulation. Circulation are key issues in their C3 location. Please vote no. Please do the right thing. Mr. Hurst has a place that I tried to save on Lake Hamilton Drive. And the argument was made that there wasn't enough traffic. But the traffic on Higdon Ferry did catch up. And I've visited his new place. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Miss Julia. Again, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm Julia Biddy Martin. I live at 107 Bel Air Drive. I've had my home there since 2002. I'm a native of Hot Springs. And I have two issues with this proposal. The first one is the traffic that we have coming off of Bel Air. I sit in my study every day. I'm working on a writing project, and I can hear the ambulances. I've run down. Every time I hear a crash, I run out my front door. I live three homes from Malvern, and I see terrible wrecks down there, and that's an issue. And regardless of whether the new traffic light is placed up there by this property, 2105 Malvern, that's still going to be an issue, because if this should be approved, all that traffic is going to come through down into Bel Air and come out on that corner, and it's a blind corner. The other issue is that we have a lot of residents in our neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods that walk, jog, and I walk my dog every day, plus I walk. I go right up by where this proposed area sits, and you can't tell me that won't affect the traffic coming through our neighborhood. It will. And I ask, please, don't approve this rezoning issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. E.B. Scott? Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Elizabeth Scott, and I've been asked by the ownership of the Hot Springs Country Club as well as Arlington Park to request that this be denied, to challenge this request, I should say, not only for the concerns...
Ms. Scott, I'm sorry. We need your address.
I live in Little Rock, but we're taxpayers here since the 30s. I do not live in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'm representing the Hot Springs Country Club.
We just need your street.
I'm sorry?
We just need a street address. That's all we need.
1100 West Capitol Avenue.
It's great.
Thank you. Thank you. I represent the Hot Springs Golf and Country Club, as I said, and Arlington Park. That section where that we're all discussing is one of the few remaining beautiful recreational and residential areas on Malvern, as it has developed farther toward town and farther toward the highway bypass. So we're hoping that you will keep this as residential, recreational. We helped and worked with RDOT in putting in the signal at Lakeside, and they are taking part of our property across from Lakeside where the signal will actually go. So we feel like it's very important that a light goes there. We also had asked that they put a light at Country Club Drive and across from Suburban, that was that intersection, to slow down the traffic, as several have said, because of the hill and the curve. And in addition to tourists that come to the country club and residents that are driving around there, as well as the members and citizens that can frequent the country club, we are so concerned about the teenagers that come there in their sports teams for that we give time to play golf or to play tennis and help the school districts out that way. I really worry about those kids as much as everyone else. So it's critical that we do not convert this to commercial. And I do hope that eventually, as I'm working with RDOT, that we can put in another light at Country Club and Suburban. Any questions of me? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Rhonda DeVille. I finally got one.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda DeVille. I live at 2007 Malvern Avenue. It's between Suburban Drive and Bel Air. I live right there with the rock wall. I see traffic up and down Malvern Avenue every day. Let's see. So I'm asking the board tonight to not allow that 2105 Malvern be rezoned from residential to commercial. My concern is that in the future that there is a lot in between me and Suburban that would also then be rezoned commercially in the future. Let's see, I believe once a lot is zoned for residential, it should stay residential. There's houses on every side of these lots, and it would infringe on everyone's privacy. I don't think by building something, it would benefit our neighborhood. You know, we might get taxes back here in the future, but I think very little. I think the only person who's going to be benefiting from this is going to be the landowner or the investor himself. And then I also understand that it's cheaper for the investor to buy the property and change the zoning than it is to go and buy commercial property itself. And I don't see why they can't move building commercially down by Carpenter Dam in Malvern where it's already been zoned for commercial. My husband and I, we've lived here for 5 years. We've done so much work to our property. We've increased the valuation of our property just to make it look, you know, beautiful, just like the rest of our neighborhood and everybody else's. So I ask that you guys do not approve of this, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Jessica Savorka.
Hello, my name is Jessica Soroka, and I live at 116 Valley View Street. The applicant has failed to meet the burden to demonstrate the character of the neighborhood would not be negatively impacted. The application states we contend hardly any traffic is likely to travel in the area for businesses that falls within the permitted use of C3 zoning. However, the zoning code, the Hot Springs zoning code section 16-2-29 requires the applicant to convincingly demonstrate that the character of the neighborhood would not be materially or adversely affected by the uses permitted in the proposed change. And the applicant only offers their assumption of no change, which does not meet the burden to convincingly demonstrate no adverse effect. The proponent has also failed to demonstrate a public need for commercial zoning as required for rezoning by Hot Springs Zoning Code section 16-2-11 subsection E1. The applicant states there's a lack of raw commercial land but offers no evidence to support the claim as required by the zoning code. The Planning Commission was able to find other commercial properties existing in the area, and there's plenty of space on Malvern Avenue that is zoned commercial. The applicant's letter states that there is a change in zoning that would be extremely positive to growth of the local economy. However, it is not possible to make this assumption when there is no proposed use given in the application. The decrease in taxes generated from decreases in value to the local property owners needs to be considered when talking about the impacts to the economy. This proposal would also not serve the downtown area as stated in the letter because it is not within walking distance to the downtown area. There are no pedestrian paths, no public transportation stops, or even bike lanes to access the site. It would only be accessible by private vehicle, so there is no connection to the downtown area. In conclusion, the application has failed to meet the requirements of the zoning code to demonstrate a public need or no material or adverse effect. It's failed to meet the goals, the city goals, and for these reasons, I request the application is denied.
Thank you, ma'am. Milam Rakesh? Did I butcher another name? I'm sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Milan Rakic, and I live at 200 Wellington, which is two properties north of this property that's trying to be rezoned. Excuse me. If I'm correct, this property fronts two streets, Malvern Avenue and Suburban Street. If there's some kind of commercial property built there in the future, there will undoubtedly be an exit to Suburban Street. Suburban is a very narrow street where two cars could barely pass each other. And for the majority of that property on Suburban Street, it is one way towards the neighborhood, not towards Malvern Avenue. So our biggest concern is traffic in the neighborhood. I don't think we really care what type of business is on that property, but if they put an exit from that property onto Suburban Street, it just wipes out the whole neighborhood. Narrow streets with no curbs, children on bicycles, people walking their dogs. So I'm opposed to this, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Larry Myers?
Madam Director, Chair, and Commissioners, thank you, among many of us here, for allowing us this opportunity to be with you. My name is Larry Myers. I reside at 2133 Malvern Avenue, which starts at the corner of Lakeside Road and Malvern, directly across Lakeside Road from the subject property. My wife, Jan, and I, of record, oppose this zoning request. Within 3 minutes, I'll add my rationale and reasoning why. We not only speak for ourselves, but our friends, Dr. and Mrs. Barney Bond, who spoke earlier, and Mr. and Mrs. Steve Hobby, both of who adjoin this property on its north boundary. Their homes that they've lived in for a long time, many, many years. Both of them adjoin what is proposed to be rezoned for C2. And all of our friends down Suburban Drive and Lakeside Road that I have discussed and my phone has rung. So for them, I do speak in opposition. I call your attention that within the C3 zoning ordinance, already referred to many things that are non-residential in nature that can happen. I want to read this. The commercial zone would include, and this is the word include, uses of retail sales and service, which I'm going to pause there. I'm going to come back. Restaurants, bars, customary accessory uses, in addition to conditional uses such as car washes, churches, and etc. Going back to retail sales and service, as I thought of this application, the first thing that popped in my mind is, oh, somebody is going to put in a strip center in addition to possibly something else. So I did the mathematics on the requirements under the C3 zone for parking spaces, for building to land area ratio, and easily it would take care of 15 retail strip shopping center stalls of averaging 1,500 square foot each, and actually would be more, but just using 15. Now let's go back to retail sales and services. Think in those 15 stalls, the things that are not mentioned here. As you drive past where you see strip centers, think about some of those things that you see in operation there as being right on this property. Now, without any proposed use by the applicant, all should assume the worst form of commercial use within this zone.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but time is up.
Oh, can I have somebody else's time?
You have to ask them.
All right. Thank you. And again,
We are opposed.
Thank you, sir. Brant and Michelle Perigo? Or just one of you?
That's just me. My name is Brant Perigo. I live at 111 Suburban Drive. I live directly across the street north of Dr. Bond, and I'm out on that street regularly. So I have four concerns I'd just like to hit quickly. One is the elevation of Malvern and the curvature. People come over that hill over 50 miles an hour on a regular basis when you're trying to pull out from Lakeside Road. And a light does not necessarily stop the speed approaching that hill before you come over it. And so I just think that's still a concern, even with a light. Even visitors or people coming may not realize it's just right over the hill. Secondly, we are buying this property, our property, from a private owner, and we've invested a ton of time and money and energy. Our taxes have been elevated significantly by the city. And now if we put in a commercial property, I believe that devalues all the hard work and with traffic potentially increasing in our neighborhood. I would not want to live there. So and that's hard because I put a lot of work in there, but that's what it does to a neighborhood. Third, we also have a lot of children that play on Suburban Drive. I watch them regularly. And if we increase traffic there, you're jeopardizing the safety for children. We have 2 homes specifically that have young kids that ride bikes, not to mention all those who walk. And so I just think you're changing the dynamic of that neighborhood, and it affects the value that people have invested in their homes. And I'm not just one of many. So we are opposed. Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you,
I have
sir.
one question. Sure. What taxes did the city increase on you?
All I know is I pay Nick Finzer as the landowner, and the taxes have just increased each year.
The property taxes?
The property taxes.
That's the county, that's not the city.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. But they're increasing. I'm paying more. That's right.
And thank you, Commissioner, for protecting the city. Larry Bailey?
Evening, everyone. Excuse me. I said I haven't talked for a while. I live at 118 Suburban Drive. I've lived there for 40 years, and this is the 4th time I've come before this committee to try to stop a rezoning of the Suburban Heights area. The first one happened in 1981 when I first came here, and Larry Myers just spoke to you. He owns that big house over there with 14 acres. They wanted to turn the house into a party house and build singles condos in the 14 acres behind it, and that was turned down. About 15 years later, they wanted to rezone a corner of Oakcrest and Lakeside for a child care center, and that was turned down because there was unloading and loading would have been hazardous on the road there. And of course, we just talked about the recent one where Arvest Bank was going to come in. Now, Mr. Hirsch says that the traffic studies there don't mean as much because they were going to put a traffic light in. And Albert Pike has twice, but Albert Pike is 90% commercial and the speed limit's 35. Malvern Avenue is mixed and the speed limit is 40. And as the gentleman just said, if you drive down Malvern Avenue in the afternoon at 40 mile an hour, you better get ready to get out of the way because they average about 50. Suburban Drive, as the other gentleman said, I want to talk about that because when we came there, we had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and there was probably 20 kids under the age of 12 on that street. It's matured. Old people have died, moved away. I'm one of the senior citizens there now at 76, but we go from 2 years old to 95 on Suburban Drive. The street's narrow. It is not curbed. It does not have sidewalks, and it is an established residential area. It's been there for 75 years plus. Alan Ladd grew up 400 feet right down the street from my house. So to give you an idea how long it's been there, I served on the city's long-range planning committee in the early 90s when I was a member of the county quorum court. And one of the things we talked about, I remember specifically because I live out there, was Malvern Avenue and the commercialization thereof. And one of the things that came out of that long-range planning committee, which the city accepted at that time, was yes, there would be commercial development, but we would not allow it to impinge upon established residential areas. And that's what's going to happen. Our community from Bel Air over to Lakeside, and on each side of that, and down Spencer and Valley View and into Eastgate and down Suburban is a thriving community. It's not deteriorating. If you want to come out there and drive through, you'll find out that our lawns are immaculate. The people are continuing to prove their homes, and there are more children coming into the area now as the generations are turning over. There's about 8 or 9 children under 8 on our street now. And they do play out on that street, and that's a shame that we would take a chance on doing this, because they will dump onto Suburban Drive. And when they go on Suburban Drive, they either got to go down Wellington and come out, or they got to come down Suburban, turn down to Lakeside, and came back out the other way. And the street's not made for that. Now, a little bit of money somebody's going to make by flipping this thing over, like Larry Myers was saying, is there, but it's not going to be anything in comparison to the loss of value of our homes and our
Thank you,
community
Mr. Bailey.
if you let this happen. Thank you.
Kevin McCarthy?
Good evening. My name's Kevin McCarthy. I live at 117 Farnsworth Street. As has been stated several times, the applicant, from my understanding, must prove that there will be no detrimental impact on the neighborhood or the surrounding the property that's being rezoned. That, to me, sounds like the burden of proof is upon the applicant. It should be noted the applicant purchased this property as is, zoned residential. Failed zoning attempts are of record, and he has been on notice that other people have tried this and it didn't work. And I'm not sure that anyone can prove that the neighborhood has changed materially since any of the prior denials. So, to me, the board would have to find something different than what the prior boards have found in order to pass this. The rezoning this property satisfies no demand. There are plenty, as has been reported, of underutilized parcels with C3 zoning within a reasonable travel distance from this location. And even after a traffic light is installed, that light will be green more often than it's red, which means the traffic will continue to drive 40 and 50 miles an hour unless they're stopped by the red light. And it's still going to be a dangerous intersection, for the next 2 roads, for Bel Air, and I guess it's Suburban that also, well, Suburban feeds in, but for Bel Air is just as dangerous as Lakeside, if you ask me. That's all I got to say. I echo everything else that the other opponents have had to say as well.
Thank you, sir. Clay and Pam Connor.
This is Pam Connor. I'm at 119 Farnsworth. I just want to say that I resent the innuendo that we are functioning based on fear. I think that we're functioning based on having no understanding of what might take place in that area. The people that are opposing this right now really love their neighborhood. They love it and have worked hard for it. And I would ask that you protect it as much as possible and as much as your staff has recommended. Thank you for your time and consideration.
May I ask a question, Ms. Connor? I don't understand the innuendo of functioning based on fear.
The original gentleman that was representing the seller had stated that he thought that the opposition was based on fear.
That's what Mr. Hurst said.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. And do we have others?
That is all we have who have signed up to speak.
Okay. Then everybody that has signed up to speak has done so. Commissioners, no questions of anybody that signed up to speak?
I have a question, Ms. Selman. The Suburban, I understand that it's one way for a short distance, is that correct?
It is.
Is that turning off of Malvern going east?
It is.
Okay.
Okay. Then the public section of the public testimony of the evening has closed, and the commissioners may now discuss the proposal amongst themselves.
I've got one thing to say. Well, probably more than one. During my time as a planning commissioner, I've seen things come before the commission regarding this same type of area on different occasions.
Hey, Brian.
Speak into the
Sorry.
mic.
I've seen things come before this commission involving this area before. I am pro-growth for hot springs, but I am wholeheartedly passionate about preserving these established neighborhoods. I have worked in these neighborhoods. I've remodeled several homes in these neighborhoods. And the whole place is beautiful. I don't see, I must disagree with my friend Mr. Hurst. I don't see an attitude of fear among the people that we have heard from tonight, sir. I see an attitude of pride. And this neighborhood, along with other concerns of public safety, I'm concerned about the ability of the streets to hold commercial dumpster trucks and other things. But the biggest thing for me is that in my opinion, and I will be voting my opinion, in my opinion, the integrity of this neighborhood must be preserved. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Any of our Zoomers?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
would it be possible for Mr. Hurst to read that court's decision once again?
Certainly. Mr. Hurst, if you would, please.
Yes.
What the laws was out there?
Lengthy decision. I think that
Yes, I think they won.
the commissioner wanted me. Does he want me to read the 3 paragraphs I selected, or the entire order?
Bob, just those what you read earlier.
Okay.
I just want.
What I read earlier was paragraph 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The evidence before the court clearly reflects that there has been a radical and dramatic change in the character of this entire surrounding area, which is Arkansas Highway 270, referred to as Malvern Avenue. The perpetuation of the restrictive covenants in the deeds of 1946 are no longer of benefit to this land, as numerous establishments are commercial in nature, including retail, commercial, and professional offices, hospitals, pharmacies, banks, and many other types of commercial activity. The continued enforcement of the restrictive covenant would be inequitable, unreasonable, and unduly oppressive. Arkansas law does not favor restraints on the alienation of real property.
And when was that written?
That order was entered on May the 8th of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Selman?
Yes, thank you. The decision that he is referring to is not relevant to your decision regarding zoning.
Thank you.
The standards for deciding whether to change zoning are located in the Hot Springs Code, and what exists outside of that is a curiosity, a distraction, but not a standard for making your decision.
Thank you, ma'am.
Director Solomon, Am I correct in, or would you please remind me and remind the commission what the staff finding was?
Yes, I can do that. The staff finding was that the application fails to demonstrate convincingly that a zone change from R2 to C3 will not materially or adversely affect the neighborhood. The application fails to demonstrate a public need for land so zoned, as more than a dozen undeveloped C3 properties can be identified on the zoning map within 1 mile of the subject lots. Hot Springs code requirements for zone change are not met.
Thank you.
Yes,
Ms. Selman, would you please give us just a quick overview of the Melbourne Overlay?
Yes, the Melbourne Overlay is a design overlay in that it requires certain physical attributes on the exterior of non-single-family residential development on Malvern Avenue.
So can there be more residential development within the Malvern Overlay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Other questions, commissioners?
Madam Director, I've got another question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there any intersection with a traffic light in Hot Springs that the properties at that intersection are not commercial?
I don't have the answer to that question.
Okay. Of those, what'd you say, 14 properties
Yes.
that are available?
Yes.
Do any of those have a traffic light?
I don't have that information.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Okay.
I don't have it.
I'm sorry, yes? Do you have something else? No? Okay. All right, I have a motion to approve item 1, and the staff findings support a vote to not approve. This is a little bit different. If you want to vote to recommend that the board rezone the subject lots, your vote would be yes, and because why? You will need to cite one or more of the Hot Springs Code section 16-2-11E1 standards in support of the zone change. Want to hear it again?
I thought this was not to approve as the recommendation. Wouldn't that be a yes?
Oh, it's got to be in the affirmative.
Okay, this motion is in the affirmative. So if you wish to not recommend approval, you vote no with staff findings.
Yes.
Everybody okay? Mr. Stoddard, would you please call the roll?
Thomason?
Yes.
And your finding?
I thought I'm voting against for the recommendation. I thought that
And
was
you
a
vote
yes.
no.
It's a no. The motion is in the affirmative.
That's what I
Motion
did.
is to approve.
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
And is your reason with staff findings?
Yes.
Okay.
Michelle Baker?
No, in agreement with staff findings.
Gosley?
I vote yes to approve it.
Because?
Well, if I understood it correctly, Director Selman's comments were that it will not adversely affect the neighborhood.
May I make a clarification?
Sure.
My statement was that there was no proof that it would not adversely affect the neighborhood.
Okay.
I can read the statement if you would like.
No, that's fine. I misunderstood.
if you want
Madam
to vote.
Chairman, may I stop the voting process a second?
Sure.
Ms. Selman, if this resolution does pass, and who will determine, who will the developer have to get approval for what type of structure is going to go there?
This hearing is for a recommendation to the Board of Directors. The Board of Directors will make the final decision.
Okay. But is there any regulation that he would have to follow, he or she would have to follow?
He or she would have to follow the design guidelines of the Melbourne Overlay at a minimum, and would be subject to the requirements of the C3 zone district.
Mm-hmm.
But there's items that wouldn't even have to come before
Well,
the
this
board,
is,
right?
if we're voting, we need to vote.
I was voting.
Yeah, no, I know. But
Mr. Stoddard?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so just for clarification, Mr. Gosley, are you still a yes?
Yes, I am.
You need to give us, you have to cite from the code section standards to support the zone change.
Well, I guess I'm not exactly sure, Madam Chairman, which code it would be, but I fail to see where a light, any property that is at an intersection of a traffic light, to my recollection, and I've gone through this, I don't know of any instance where that property is not zoned commercial, and I fail to see where a bank, attorney's office, or accounting office is going to adversely affect this. And I have every faith in this commission that they're not going to let anything that would remotely adversely affect this neighborhood happen. And I don't see a business that's 8 to 5 with little or no waste, how that's going to affect it. Now, to tell you which zone, which ordinance that is, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Newman?
No, I agree with the staff.
Goldsmith?
No, I agree with the staff findings.
White?
No on staff findings and the reasons that I enumerated during my statement.
Walker?
No on staff finding.
Ramick?
I'm going to vote yes, just for the mere fact of the development of Malvern Avenue. I think it's inevitable for that growth. So that's my reasoning.
Janet?
No, with staff report findings.
It's 7 no, 2 yes.
Okay. The motion does not pass, and unless appealed to the Board of Directors, will not proceed beyond this hearing tonight. The appeal period is 30 days from today, and the appeal would need to be presented to the city clerk.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the director's report. Director Selman?
Yes, I have one item to report, and that is that the comprehensive plan draft for Forward Hot Springs will be, we'll do our public engagement in a very unusual way, because we can't find a room where, more than 10 people can sit. So we are going to be releasing each day one section of the code, a summary of it, it's about 6 pages, I think. And I've seen the scripts and the graphics, and I think people will find it a very easy way to absorb what is proposed in the plan, because you'll be looking at one topic per day. We're going to start on July 5th.
Okay.
And I think we have 8 different different themes that we'll be releasing. So that day after July 4th is actually a bigger day than July 4th, so I hope you're all looking forward to it like I am.
Yeah, definitely.
We're really excited.
And how are you releasing it?
We're doing it online.
Okay.
It will be on the city's website. It will be, I should get Katie out here to talk about it, but all of you will be notified. We'll be doing a huge publicity blitz to make sure that different media are used and that everybody who is interested will have an opportunity to see what's been put together and have an opportunity to comment on it. Lots of different ways to do that too. So we're hoping that this gives us an even better process than what we would have had with a traditional public meeting, but that remains to be seen. But I would really like all of you to tell your friends and neighbors that this is going to be coming out on July 5th. You'll be hearing a lot about it.
We can have parties.
We could have parties, but they'll have to
Only
be
10 of us are
socially distanced.
Well, I only party with 1 or 2 people, so not like I'm a real... Okay.
So, anyway, thank you for all of you who've been so involved in this, moving to this point. It's been really, really a good process.
Thank you all for doing it and leading us. It's great.
We'll see about that.
All right. With no further business to discuss, we're ready to adjourn the June...
And I would like to make a motion.
I'm sorry.
Adjourn.
Would you? Okay. Then it is adjourned.
It is so done.
And
Thank you all.
with Mr. Ramick back, it looks